And welcome to the Mark Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And joining us now is a man who has dedicated more than 3 decades of his life to defending this country. Retired Air Force Colonel Rob Maness enlisted at age 17 and rose through the ranks from bomb disposal technician all the way to full colonel. He commanded a bomber squadron in combat during Operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. Later commanded a major air base and was on duty at the Pentagon on September 11th. His decorations include the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, and the Air Medal. After retiring from the military, Colonel Maness worked in the energy industry, ran for the United States Senate from Louisiana, and today hosts the Rob Maness Show. He is a clear-eyed voice on national security, military readiness, and the direction of our country. Please welcome Colonel Rob Maness to the Mark Scaringi Show. Colonel, welcome.
Well, thanks, Mark. I appreciate that wonderful introduction, and so does my mom.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time to come on our show. There is a lot going on around the world, and in particular in the Middle East, with the war in Iran. And we thought, it's not much of a guest who can bring the experience and the knowledge that you can to the show. So we're so happy to have you here today. We've talked a lot on the show about the war. But I'm a lawyer, not a colonel, and I have no military experience myself. So we're pleased to hear from you, and perhaps you can give us some of the benefit of your views based upon your longstanding expertise in this particular field. And I've reviewed public statements you've made about the war with Iran. And I thought what I would do is just give a very basic summary so that our audience will get some quick context for your thoughts on the war. And then I wanted to ask you some more specific questions. So you have expressed, and this is through social media and through your podcast, the importance of the United States maintaining air and naval power, the importance of targeting the IRGC as the center of gravity. You've also expressed some skepticism of the need for a large-scale invasion. Of course, you have supported finishing the job, and you've expressed some optimism about the potential internal Iranian resistance. Is that a fair assessment on a very macro level of some of your general thoughts about the war in Iran?
Yeah, I think so. At the very beginning, though, I would just add that, I had a lot of discussions with folks and was asked about, well, should the president be doing this? Should America be doing this? And those kind of things. And, what I was saying then was, look, the president has access to intelligence information that I don't have. I couldn't tell whether he had the best information or not, and nobody could. But it's a very, very difficult decision to take your country into war. And you have to go into it clear-eyed with an understanding that war develops a life of its own when you go to war. And this is the first full-scale industrial level warfare from the air and the sea that we've seen in a very, very long time throughout the world, actually, not just from the United States of America. So as we've gone along, I think you captured everything that I've been talking about since then very, very well.
Well, Colonel, you talk about having a plan before you go in. And maybe I'll loosely quote Napoleon Bonaparte: there is nothing so rare as a man with a plan. And then maybe in contradistinction to the great boxer Mike Tyson, who said everyone has a plan until he gets punched in the mouth. And the president has given a variety of reasons why he attacked Iran on February 28th. but I wanted to just focus on his 8-minute Truth Social video that he published on that day when he announced Operation Epic Fury. And his primary stated reasons for the U.S. with Israeli strikes on Iran centered on eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. And now that we've been at war, kind of on and off for several months now, do you agree with President Trump that on, let's say, the day before, February 27, Iran presented an imminent threat to the United States?
Yeah, I absolutely did before the president made his decision. Look, I have openly said, if you go back and look at my interviews, that I believe, based on my experience from observing the North Koreans' nuclear weapons break out from the inside when I was in the military, that the Iranians could possibly already have between 7 and 11 actual nuclear or atomic warheads, but they had not mated them with a delivery device yet that was reliable enough to use it without threatening their own forces, their own people, and those kind of things. So I believed at that point that they were an imminent threat and were probably, just based on my educated experience and what I'd seen before in the past, that they were probably pretty close to a reliable delivery capability that could reach outside of their borders and obviously potentially hurt U.S. forces, our allies in the region, those kind of things.
Well, Colonel, you're using the past tense of the verb that you believed that at that time, February 27, Iran posed an imminent threat. Is that still your belief today, based upon several months into this war and maybe kind of a retrospective look now that we have more knowledge about the capabilities of the Iranians?
Well, no, obviously we have destroyed much of their capability to reach outside of their borders and much outside of, they can still hit friendly countries. They can hit our forces in the area with limited medium and short range ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, rockets, artillery, and they still have small craft available and those kinds of things. So they're not an imminent threat from a nuclear delivery capability. First, because of Midnight Hammer last summer, and then Epic Fury has just decimated their ability to do that. And if they were close to it, they've been put off at least 5 to 10 years from being able to get that done, just because they can't get access to the facilities that we have done a pretty good job, from what I can tell, collapsing and those kind of things. Even if there is anything usable there, they have to get to it. And our intelligence and surveillance reconnaissance assets are pretty much staring at those sites 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I would imagine. And if there's any movement to that effect, we can strike those at will and stop it if we desire to. So no, I don't think they have that capability to reach out and touch us or touch their neighbors with a nuclear weapon at this time.
Well, I'll tell you, from my perspective, listening to the president talk very early on in this war, and then also I think very early on we heard from high-ranking members of the Trump administration testifying before Congress, including the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. And what I took from what I was hearing from the president and from his top national security and intelligence community advisors is that Operation Midnight Hammer, which you mentioned, from June of last year, those strikes occurred, and they targeted primarily the Iranian nuclear sites at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. And the way the president has described them, I'm sure you're used to hearing his phrase that we obliterated Iran's nuclear program, and that is retrospective. That's June of 2025. And then you listen to Tulsi Gabbard and other Trump administration officials early on in the war talking about the combined assessment of the United States national security intelligence community, talking about how Iran halted its nuclear weapons program back in 2003, and that the annual threat assessments as recently as 2024 and 2025, stating that Iran was not currently undertaking the key nuclear weapons development activities necessary to produce testable nuclear devices. And the 2026 annual threat assessment, continuing this general consensus among the United States national intelligence community. Knowing those two kind of facts on a macro level, so to speak, do you think that it contradicts what the president was saying early on in the war and then continuously throughout the war, where he talked about not only the imminent threat being one of his goals, but also one of his main goals was to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program?
Yeah, unfortunately, Mark, I really strongly question the veracity of any combined national intelligence assessment that's coming out of the Biden administration years and overlapping into the Trump administration. And the president would be correct to be skeptical of that. Must be skeptical of any other outside intelligence from our allies and those kind of things in his decision making. So I'm skeptical of those assessments. Because of the fake assessments that the Biden and Obama administrations have put out vis-a-vis the Russia hoax and those kind of things. Unfortunately, a lot of those same people down in the bowels of the national intelligence system still work there, and they had not been cleared out by the time Tulsi Gabbard was making those statements, and she was doing her duty to talk about in the public way that she was allowed to. About what the assessment she was being given was. So I don't really fault her for that. But I personally have a lot of skepticism about it based on everything we've seen in my experience in the intelligence community too. I'll be honest with you. When I first read the intelligence capability assessment that came out in January of 2021 on Russia that started this whole Russia hoax thing, I immediately saw it as primarily a false and politicized document. So that's where we're at. I just feel like I should say that from a mindset perspective. That's where I'm at on that. So unfortunately, that's the world we live in. I have been watching the Iranians since I was 17 years old, and when they declared war on us, I have a lot of experience in observing and looking at the intelligence of other nuclear breakout countries like the North Koreans and the Pakistanis, and based on everything that I've seen, I don't believe that the Iranians stopped their nuclear enrichment program, and the nuclear enrichment is exactly what the issue is. If they were at 60%, then they were just a step away from weapons grade material. And if you think they weren't building their warheads in parallel with developing the weapons grade material, then folks don't understand that think that way, don't understand the development, the weapon system development system. So I think it's a tough situation, it's a tough decision. I don't envy the president in that decision, but I still believe that he was correct that they were an imminent threat, and they no longer are, fortunately. And but also, unfortunately, war has a life of its own. And whether no plan survives contact with the enemy, that's the military version of Napoleon, the U.S. military's version of it. And no exit strategy survives contact with the enemy, even though we require our folks to have those as part of any war plan at all, quite frankly. So I think the president and his team are dealing with things, trying to get ahead of things and anticipate, being audacious. And using every instrument of power. I'm very pleased to see the blockade of the ports and cutting off that $500 million a day in oil revenue to the Iranian government, because the IRGC has got to be able to pay its people, and I don't think they're able to pay their people consistently right now. And that right there is probably one of the greatest levers that will result in them eventually coming to some sort of solution that's in the favor of U.S. vital national interests, which is eliminating that nuclear material and capability.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm thinking back when I was watching Tulsi Gabbard testify, and she did make the point repeatedly that it was the president's decision to determine whether or not the threat posed by Iran was imminent.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what you are saying in a way, that our national security intelligence community can present their assessment to the president. They may have their own opinion as to the gravity or the severity of the threat. Certainly, there was a threat, still is a threat to the United States national security posed by Iran. But at the end of the day, it's the president's call to determine whether it's imminent and whether it's imminent enough to justify the action to be taken. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. That's where we're at. I mean, he's the commander in chief of the U.S. Armed Forces and responsible, the one elected official that's solely responsible for the defense of the United States. And this threat has been growing for over 48 years now. And as you could see by the IRGC's behavior, and that's who really controls Iran. The mullahs don't really control Iran. They picked Khamenei's son because they could control him, and I don't even know if he's alive or not. But the IRGC is the ones making these decisions, and they're just fanatics. They have no honor. They lie, cheat, steal, and will do whatever they can to maintain their power so that they can ultimately achieve their goals, which is to start an apocalyptic war from their religious government's perspective. So it's a tough situation that we now find ourselves in. And ultimately, it's the decision of the president of the United States. There's a lot of people criticizing him for letting the talks continue. I don't have a problem with that. The only place where I get concerned with that is if we start getting Americans killed because we may be pausing our use of force on these capabilities, and then Americans get killed because of it. You know, my advice to the president would be to continue to put pressure militarily and economically on these individuals and cut every logistics pathway into the borders of that country, cut it, and stop resources from flowing in, because, you know, we didn't finish our entire target set before we started the first pause. And a lot of those targets were things like bridges up in the mountains that allow trains with oil tankers to come in, and the port in the Caspian Sea that allowed munitions and food and other and oil resources to come in from Russia, and those kind of things. We have to cut those completely and keep them cut. And using only air power requires that you persistently go back and readdress those targets every once in a while. And if we will do that, combined with the blockade, I think the IRGC will have to cease their hostilities against their neighbors and shipping in the straits and those kind of things.
Colonel, you mentioned that, I think earlier in response to the first question, and that is, you know, we don't know what intelligence the president has that is not public. And so assuming there may be a reason that the president attacked when he did, based upon intelligence that none of us knows about. You know, I wish that if that were true, there would be a way that intelligence could be made public so that the American people could have all of the evidence at our disposal and known to us, so that we could make a more informed judgment or assessment about whether our country should be at war or not. But that's just wishful thinking on my behalf. You know, after all, we are a republic, and I don't want to get into the whole issue of should the president have gone to the Congress and asked for a declaration of war. I went through all of that in my first responses to the president's attack, and I don't want to spend time on that now. But you know, in my view, it would be, I think, it would help get the American people behind the war effort to a larger degree than the American people are, because the polls show that the American people overwhelmingly oppose this war. It would help, one would think, if whatever intelligence was communicated to the president that helped necessitate his decision to strike when he did, if that were public, perhaps that would turn the American people around somewhat, and help engender more support from the American people. Is this just me wishful thinking, or and is it that there's just some intelligence that cannot be disseminated?
Well, in this category, first of all, you have to consider the circumstances that you're in before you go to release intelligence like that's being used by the president to make an actual decision. And that is that the context of where we're at today is that we're still at war with this enemy, which is, I characterize them, and I'm probably not characterizing them as enough as aggressive, violent, dishonorable people that have as their goals to start an apocalyptic war that could and would use nuclear weapons on the United States and our forces if they at any opportunity. So we're still at war with those people. So releasing that kind of intelligence it would involve probably human intelligence sources and those kind of things that may or may not still be inside the country that would be put at risk that we probably are still using. They could be related to an allied intelligence network that we don't want to risk because they're still in active operations and those kinds of things. And we just don't know. So to release it would be probably not the right thing to do because it puts our forces at risk. It puts any allied forces at risk, puts people inside the country that are part of that resistance that you mentioned before that I had talked about, potentially at risk while we're still in active combat with these folks. So I would advise the president not to release it at this point until it's evident that combat operations are complete and we've got some type of agreement so the country of Iran can be a member of the community of nations again and not be a threat to its neighbors and a threat to us.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that Iran 47 years ago had declared war on America. And I do remember the president talking about that early on. And as I guess no longer a young man, I do remember the Iranian hostage crisis in 1979. I was 9 years old at the time, and it certainly shocked America. And was a horrible ordeal for our hostages and for our country. And I recall so many of the American people so disappointed and embarrassed and really ashamed at the Carter administration's ineffectual response to that crisis. So no question about the horrific circumstances of the hostage crisis. We've also heard various members of various politicians and others in Iran over the years, the chanting death to America. It's one of the reasons the president stated in his Truth Social post on the 28th for attacking Iran, the 79 hostage crisis, the chanting death to America. But those justifications appear to me to be more along the lines of vengeance, of punishing the Iranian regime for what happened many years ago with the hostage crisis, and punishing a regime for various members of its government and others chanting death to America. Do you see it as vengeance, and do you believe that vengeance is a proper justification for America, for a republic, to go to war?
No, I don't see it as vengeance, Mark. And just to fill in a little bit of the gaps, the Iranians have been at war with us. It's not just about the hostage crisis. It's not about the bombing in Beirut. They killed over 200 U.S. Marines. It's not about the bombing of the embassy in Lebanon that killed a bunch of people. It's not about, it's not just about those things. Look, they killed thousands and thousands of Americans in the Iraq War, in the Afghanistan war, even. So all the way up through today, and they are a threat within the United States of America. We know that there are Hezbollah members that made it through the border system under the Biden administration, and they're not adequately tracked. And they work with the Venezuelans, they work with the drug cartels in combination with these operations that come in and out of the United States of America. So they are not just a threat, but they have actively killed Americans all of this time. And I think the president was right to characterize this, that they declared war on us. And I don't want to rehash the whole, should Congress have done something, made a decision and those kind of things. But when Americans are dying at the hands of a nation state like this, even if we hadn't passed the authorization to use military force after 9/11 against nation states that support terrorism, that's still in place, even though we tried to get it removed and rescinded, that authorization to use military force is still in place. So when you have all of these and you look at the entire picture from 1979 up through today, that country and their forces are at war with us. That's why the president was justified in killing General Soleimani when he was caught daring us by coming into Iraq when we killed him. And just that alone, I think, is more than enough justification for the commander-in-chief to make this decision. I would have loved for Congress to weigh in and approve this operation on top of their authorization to use military force against a terrorist state, which Iran definitely is in that category. But it really wasn't necessary from a perspective of a command operation to try to defend ourselves against this pending horrendous ability to reach out and touch our forces and maybe even our country with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, well, you mentioned General Soleimani and Iranians involved in killing U.S. soldiers. You mentioned Beirut. Some of our listeners may not be old enough, or maybe they are, to remember the bombing of the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut back in 1983.
Yeah.
That was a group that later took the name Hezbollah that we hear about in the press every day today. But what is interesting to me is that President Reagan at the time, he did not authorize a major retaliation against Hezbollah or against Iran in response for that devastating surprise attack on our U.S. Marines. Later in his autobiography, President Reagan talked about how his decision to send the Marines to Beirut was the source of my greatest regret and greatest sorrow, he wrote in his autobiography. And there's talk today about perhaps the United States moving away from some of its military bases in the Middle East, in particular in Bahrain, due to the inability of the United States to ensure that those bases will be protected from attack. Our base in Iran was attacked by the Iranians, did suffer apparently significant enough damage that it could not continue to be used as a supply base for the fleet. But is there any? Do you have any? I guess any larger, more strategic thoughts about the possibility? And before I get the question out, I am also thinking of Osama bin Laden repeatedly citing the presence of U.S. military forces in Saudi Arabia. the land of the two holy places, Mecca and Medina, as one of his main grievances and justification for attacking the United States on 9/11. Is there any? Do you have any more strategic thinking, kind of long-term thinking, that perhaps the United States military putting itself front and center in the Middle East and so close to Iran, and it's almost like we're in their face in a way that may cause them to strike out against us simply because of where we are located geographically with our military bases. What do you think about some talk now in the country about maybe pulling back?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, Mark. Look, I have long. Let's take the.
I was a little all over the place with these thoughts.
Yeah, but let's take the forces in the region aspect of this. I have long called for. As a matter of fact, it was a major plank in my first U.S. Senate race that you mentioned in the intro to end the endless war policies, and the key piece to that in the Middle East was bringing our forces home that didn't need to be there. Now, as far as the Bahrain resupply point, the Fifth Fleet Naval port there, the reason wasn't because there was so much damage there. The damage was pretty insignificant from an infrastructure perspective when that base was attacked. But the reason why that's not being used is because it is within range of Iranian medium and long range and intermediate range ballistic missiles. It complicates the missile defense challenge. So if we could do it in another way, we remove that target from their area. But let's get back to the forces themselves. I have long said that we shouldn't have forces in Syria because Congress never authorized it. There's no justification for those forces to be on the ground in Syria and continue to be there. Even this president has said that before, but has not been successful in getting them home. We should not have had forces in Jordan. This is all before Epic Fury started. We should have removed the forces in Jordan, the ground forces. We had 3 soldiers from Georgia's National Guard killed there in the Biden administration. Totally unnecessary for those forces to be there. They serve no strategic or tactical purpose, quite frankly. The forces we have in Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all could have been redeployed back to the United States, leave those bases in mothball status, which is what the bases when we first went into Saudi Arabia that had been built by the kingdom in Desert Shield. Those bases were in mothball status, and they were able to get generated up and be used very, very quickly. So we should have removed our forces from there because they're basically just targets for anybody, not just the Iranians, but to try to justify the Iranians firing on our forces and killing our people because we happen to have people stationed in the Middle East, quite frankly, that's ridiculous. Honestly, on its face, if our forces were attacking Iran and those kinds of things, I could see that being used as potential justification. Of course, they have the right to defend themselves. And the Soleimani attack, the Iranians did respond to that attack. But the simple fact that the forces are there, maintaining a deterrence posture or fighting terrorism, pick your mission, is not an adequate justification for the Iranians to attack them or their neighbors. And by no means is it a justification for them to continue these attacks on commercial shipping. And I just might add, that's a mission that George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson first took on, protecting our commercial shipping and making sure the freedom of navigation in international seas is appropriate and not attacked. And we've actually been at war with an Islamic state or two and some non-state actors under Thomas Jefferson in order to stop them in North Africa from attacking and capturing our shipping and those kind of things. So that's a longstanding mission of the United States and the United States Navy. But it is no justification for the Iranians to attack any commercial vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian or Arabian Gulf, whatever you want to call it, in international waters. And there's no justification just because a force is present for them to justify the attacking us.
Well, I guess let me try to say it this way. I am not I'm not justifying the decisions made by the IRGC or the Iranians or Islamic jihadists such as Osama bin Laden. I guess what I'm trying to do is look at the situation from the perspective of the enemy and try to understand what is motivating the enemy to make the decisions that it does. And when one as an American citizen does that, I have taken some pushback, so to speak, and I like I'm saying, for example, when Osama bin Laden talks about the United States putting bases on sacred soil in Saudi Arabia as one of his justifications, not my justification, but one of his justifications, right or wrong, that is a motivating factor according to him. And critics of mine will say, well, don't believe everything or anything Osama bin Laden says. And then when we go into a very different place and you talk about, the rise of Adolf Hitler and the horrible things he did to the Jews in Europe. Well, he explained that in Mein Kampf. He wrote in his autobiography what his intentions were and what his hatreds were. And so from our perspective, if we could possibly try to understand, not agree with, not justify what is motivating those who are our adversaries, I think that there's value to that. And if possible, if it doesn't harm our interest, we may want to change our behavior to take away that motivation. I'm thinking of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, in particular southeastern Ukraine. For how long, did the Russians tell us and tell the world that they don't want NATO on its doorstep? They don't want NATO face to face with it. And if that became a reality in their mind, right or wrong, justified or unjustified, they're going to do something about it, and they attacked. So I guess, and with the Marines in Beirut and Reagan regretting that decision, we kind of injected our forces there as kind of some sort of multinational peacekeeping force into the middle of a civil war with various factions who were intent on destroying each other and destroying any third party who they believed was more supportive to their enemy than supportive to them. And so, do you think that there's any value in thinking about what's good for the United States from a national security perspective by at least considering what our adversaries are saying motivates them to strike out against us?
Again, a lot to unpack there. Let's start with the Ukraine and the Russians. It's very dangerous, in my opinion, to compare European thinking, East European thinking, West European thinking, any European thinking at all to the Islamist way of thinking. The Islamists try to use these situations to establish some justification. But when you look at, and the first things we did in the Pentagon, and I was part of the team that had to do this right after 9/11, was once we found out where the attack came from, is try to get behind their motivation. But what we found was it all goes back to Islam, Sharia law, and the history of Muhammad, and the actions that he's documented in the various Islamist documents, the Quran and those kind of things. And they have a goal to become supreme in any land from a religious perspective, that Islam is not the supreme religion in control of that under Sharia law. From a larger, global Islamist perspective. And I don't think it matters. As you mentioned, President Reagan a couple of times, he withdrew those. He withdrew. It was a terrible decision. We should never use U.S. forces as acquirers or peacekeeping forces, in my mind. And that was a very tough lesson to learn. They hit us at Khobar Towers too. We haven't even mentioned that. It was another Hezbollah attack, and Hezbollah is an Iranian force. Let's make no bones about it. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, they're all Iranian forces controlled by the IRGC. There is no doubt about that. Enough public intelligence to prove that as fact. But President Reagan withdrew from that. But that didn't stop the attacks on people, the kidnapping of the Colonel Higgins, who was skinned alive on video that was sent to President Reagan, by the way, by the Hezbollah Iranian-backed forces. But it didn't stop them from doing that. Whether the decision to go into Iraq in 2003 was the best decision or not is debatable. Obviously, I don't think that I agree with it looking back on it with hindsight. At the time, my wife definitely didn't agree with it. But the Iranians used their proxies to kill American forces there. Nobody attacked Iran from the United States perspective that I'm aware of. They tried to do the same thing in Afghanistan, where we were responding to 9/11 in our own defense, at least initially, up through 2006 or so, before it turned into building a democracy mission, which again was a poor idea in my mind. So yeah, I understand the reference to the Russians, and I agree with you on that. As a matter of fact, the Russians told us many, many times that if you go and do this with Ukraine, this is that's our red line. We should listen to that. But from the perspective of the Islamists, they have a totally different worldview in that regard. And I don't believe that would make any difference whatsoever to them, whether our forces were there or not. Now, are our forces targetable by them more if they're there? Yes, that's why I called for them to be withdrawn before Epic Fury was started. And I'm still calling that after this is over with, and the president said no endless wars. That's why I supported him. And my going in assumption is this will end and not be an endless war, regardless of what the end state is, in short order, is what my expectations as a voter are that voted for President Trump. But even so, with all those forces withdrawn, these Islamists are going to continue with their goals, which is to control the Iranians, especially. They want to be the hegemon in the Middle East. They want to take control of Saudi Arabia. The difference between Shia and Sunni is a problem. Erdogan in Turkey has stated that he wants to reestablish the Ottoman Caliphate as a neo-Ottoman empire. So you have that aspect of it. And this will continue regardless of whether U.S. forces are there or not. But I think it's important to get the message out there that we expect U.S. forces to be redeployed home. And many of us have been calling for it, like I think you have too, Mark, for many, many years.
Well, I certainly agree with you in that regard. Would love to see that happen. I don't think that's going to happen in our lifetimes. And I want to get to your thoughts about how the United States can complete and finish and win this war in Iran. But before I do so, I just wanted to make an observation and then maybe get your response to that. And I'm just thinking about before the end of World War II, the United States had almost no military presence whatsoever in the Middle East. We didn't think it was in our national security interests to have military bases throughout the Middle East prior to the end of World War II, and really not much of a military presence until the Gulf War in '91, and then certainly an expanded military presence with the war in Iraq in 2003. And is there any thought to the fact that it's possible that the United States could go back to the way things were and reduce significantly our military presence in the Middle East? And let me ask you, you were talking about the Iranian conflict with, for example, Saudi Arabia or even Israel. What does it matter to the United States that Iran has a conflict with Saudi Arabia? What does it matter to the United States that Iran and Israel have been at each other's throats for many, many decades now? If there are Islamic fundamentalist fanatics, ideologues in control of Iran, how is it that the American people, the United States, and our homeland, how is it that we are endangered by that?
By potential conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia?
Right. I
think the biggest challenge there is total control over the Strait of Hormuz, which we really don't need for oil anymore. In the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, the Strait was vital importance for the free flow of oil that impacted directly the United States. Now it only impacts the markets. That's why the gasoline prices have not gone through the roof as predicted, but they're also not falling because it's a global oil and gas market, and there's some impact from there, but we don't need it. So it's not a vital interest for that choke point to be opened from our perspective. But if the Iranians were to be able to take control of the Saudi peninsula by defeating Saudi Arabia, that would be a significant injection of resources and would enable these crazy fanatics to do things like get nuclear weapons that could range the globe and those kind of things. So I think from that perspective, it is in our best interest to make sure that the Saudis can defend themselves. Do our forces need to be there? Absolutely not to do that. The Saudis are perfectly capable. They have a lot of our equipment. They get trained by us, quite frankly. The Israelis have as good or better, in some cases, military capabilities than the United States does. They're our allies, of course. And again, if the Iranians were able to push all the Israelis into the sea and eliminate the nation of Israel, I mean, there goes the one liberal democracy, liberal being in a classical sense, liberal democracy that's an ally with the United States in the entire region. And I think that's important from our perspective, and very important that they be able to not just defend themselves, but take the actions they think necessary in their own best interest, not ours. But we also have to acknowledge that Israel's interests aren't always America's interests, and just like with any other allies, and I think this president does that. And I do think with this president, we do have an opportunity to redeploy forces out of the Middle East and reset the table back to what you were talking about at the end of World War II. But that's why Turkey's a NATO ally, so to keep them in the fold. As much as I think I've even said, ask the question, why are they a NATO ally at times? But as much as people might disagree with it or be concerned about it, they are a NATO ally, and there's a reason for that, so that the United States shouldn't have to have forces all over the region, because it's not our job to keep the peace for everybody, but certainly we should be supporting our allies so that they can defend themselves and keep their own peace and protect themselves from these guys. But that doesn't mean we have to have forces there to do it.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to get sidetracked on the issue of the state of Israel, because we could speak for years on that, and I would never
we could
never advocate for the destruction of the state of Israel. I would completely be opposed to that for moral reasons alone.
I am too.
But and you're talking about the importance of the existence of Israel being a liberal democracy, and maybe the only liberal democracy in the Middle East. But then I would just say, in response to that, the United States of America was the strongest nation, most powerful nation on earth prior to the existence of the modern state of Israel. And so in my view, we have been the most powerful nation on earth prior to the existence of the state of Israel. I don't know why having a liberal democracy in the Middle East makes America stronger or safer. And I'm thinking about Reagan's response to the Iranian-Iraqi war, that 9 or 10-year war in the 1980s. And you had the same Islamic fundamentalist in charge of Iran, the Ayatollah, and you had Saddam Hussein's Iraq, and they went at it year after year, and in a major war. And the United States did almost nothing either than provide armaments and military support to some limited degree to Iraq, and then also selling military arms to Iran during the war. But we
announce a break and we can come back if you want.
Okay, we're gonna get cut off here in a minute. We're gonna take a quick break and then